Hello everybody, my name is Jonathan Barini. I will be your instructor for this Web Fundamentals course, and welcome to the first presentation of this class. The purpose of this presentation is to get you guys acquainted with some basic background concepts in web design, and also to demonstrate that web design is something that's within everybody's reach. We're going to be learning HTML and CSS on this course, and this presentation is just going to go over some very basic introductory ideas. Web design is something very important. As graphic designers today, if we don't know web design, we're going to be shutting ourselves out from so many opportunities. And not only is web design something extremely useful, but it's actually fun. A lot of designers may resist it at first, but I'm confident that after this class, you're going to learn to love it, and you're going to definitely discover how much is going to add to your knowledge of graphic design and your careers. So let's go over a couple basic concepts here. First of all, HTML is what we're going to be learning in this class, HTML and CSS, but we're going to start with HTML. HTML is the language of the web. It's a web language. It's a markup language that was developed in 1995 and has stayed with us ever since and has become the worldwide standard on which websites are built. And that is a language that we're going to start learning today, in fact, right now. In fact, right now we're going to see how by the end of this lesson we're going to be able to create a simple website, believe it or not. So, and we're going to discover that really a website, creating a website, there's no really big mystery once we understand the basic concepts. So hypertext markup language, HTML is the acronym for that. The word hyper just means links, basically the fact that we can go from place to place. Hypertext is when we click on a link, we go somewhere else, and that's what really makes the web what it is today. The fact that everything is interconnected. It's the World Wide Web. Without the hyper aspect of it, we wouldn't be able to go from place to place, and we would all be separate. So that's what explains the H. The T is for text, and what we're going to discover is that HTML is a text-based language. In fact, I could write an entire website using just Notepad or TextEdit. Of course, they're not maybe the best tools for the job, but we could do that, and in fact, we're going to do a demonstration in just a few minutes. So anybody with a text editor can create a web page, and all you need is a keyboard and knowledge of the language itself. The M stands for markup, and what markup basically is defining content. For example, in a page I could have text, and the browser needs to know if that text is going to be displayed as a header or as a paragraph or as a list, for example. And the markup is what takes care of that. Basically, when we write HTML, we mark our content up so that we define it as being one thing or another thing. Just in the same way as we use paragraph styles, or perhaps in Microsoft Word you might know about headers. It works in the same way, and we're going to see in just a couple moments exactly how it works. And the word language there, the L is for language, just means that it's a structured way of arranging things, and it has its rules, just like grammar rules in English, and we're going to learn about some of those basic rules. So here we have an example of HTML markup, and what we have here, what we see here is content, and you can see here that the content is surrounded by what are called HTML elements or HTML tags. Don't worry about really what the H1 means right now. What's happening here is that the text just says this is a header, and it is a header because it's enclosed between an opening and a closing header tag. And we're going to talk about the structure of those tags and the rules for writing them. Same thing here. This is a paragraph, and you see that the difference is in the tag. In this case, we're using a P element, which stands for paragraph, and so that means that this text here in the second line is being marked up as a paragraph. The text in line 1 is being marked up as a header. The text in line 3 says this is a link, and again the change is just the different element or the different tag. In this case, we're using the anchor element to create a link. So that content has been marked up as a link. And the fourth example asks, is this a header, yes or no? The answer is no, it's not a header. because it's enclosed between an opening and a closing set of paragraph elements. So we see a pattern here. Basically, when we mark up content, we're enclosing it between some special symbols, what we see here, called tags, opening and closing tags. And that's what marks the content up as being either one thing or a different thing. When we use tags, it's important to remember that tags come in pairs. Almost always. There are a couple exceptions to this rule, but every time we open a tag, we need to get used to closing it. In this case, we see an opening and closing paragraph tags. And as you can see here from the middle, there's nothing inside it. I just included the tags there for you. But normally would look like, going back to the previous slide, the second line here. Opening paragraph tag, closing paragraph tag, and in this case just a line. It could be an entire paragraph, thousands of words. It doesn't matter as long as it's enclosed between an opening and a closing tag. And you see also that the structure of the tags is always the same. It's a less than symbol followed by whatever letter or characters make up the tag, greater than, and the closing tag is the same except it has a slash. And that's a pattern we're going to see repeating over and over again. And we're going to do a couple examples in just a moment. When we add tags to an element, we can add more than one set of tags to a particular element. For example, the word hello here is enclosed in two pairs of tags. One, which is the B here, would make it bold, and the letter I here would make it italic. So this is just to show that we can enclose contents in two or more. Sometimes there'll be reasons to wrap it in more tags. And what I want to show with this diagram is just the concept of what's called nesting. Okay, nesting is the proper wrapping of an element when it has two or more tags. And a good analogy to think about it is those little Russian dolls where one fits nicely inside of the other one. And the top example here is properly nested, and you can see here from the diagram, we can see how one fits inside of the other one like cups. What we see here is that the order of the tags closing is the inverse of the order that they open in. It's a simple concept, but very important to keep in mind. The one in the bottom is wrong. You can see here from the lines that show that those tags are not properly nested. They open and close in the same order. Therefore, they are not properly nested. Just something to get used to. And the good news is we don't have to memorize any of these things. All of these concepts are going to come through practice, and repetition, just like learning any language or like learning to play an instrument. Something else we can talk about when talking about tags is attributes. Attributes are snippets of information that go inside of the tags themselves that the browser needs to know in order to display it properly. For example, here at the top we have the word Google wrapped in the anchor tag, which I mentioned previously would make it a link. There's a problem though. If we simply wrap a word between those two tags, it doesn't make it a link because the browser doesn't know where to take us when we click on that link. So in this case, we insert an attribute, and the attribute follows the structure. It has the attribute and then the equal sign, and then among quotes or between quotes, the value of that attribute. In this case, it's just saying when I click on this word, take me to google.com. And there's dozens and dozens of different attributes that can go in tags. The point of this is not to memorize this particular attribute right now, just to understand that tags can have and sometimes have to have an attribute inside of them. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to do a couple demonstrations. I mentioned earlier that HTML is something that's text-based and that we can do with any text editor. So I'm going to go ahead and open TextEdit. Okay, I'm on a Mac. If you're on a Windows, you can open Notepad. And you see it's plain text, and in fact, let me zoom in here. plain text. Now, let me go ahead and make the font bigger so you can see it. This is much better. Before you use text edit though, make sure you go into preferences and make sure that it's set to plain text, not rich text. We need plain text. Rich text has formatting and we don't need any formatting whatsoever. So once we're in plain text, which I am here, we're ready to start. Now in order to declare something as HTML, I have to do a couple of things. First of all, I have to save it as an HTML page. So I'm going to go ahead and save as. And I'm going to save it as first lesson. And where it says .txt, I'm going to type HTML. And if it asks you if you're sure, just say use HTML. Okay, so now I'm ready to start. The first thing I'm going to do is I mentioned tags. We need two very important tags that will declare this as an HTML document other than saving it as an HTML. So I'm going to type the following. That opens, and then a closing tag, and it can be right next to it. It doesn't really matter for now. Again, the same pattern we talked about before. Here's my opening tag, here's my closing tag. That means that everything that goes between these opening and closing tags will be HTML. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that down there. And I can now type my HTML as long as it's between these two tags. So let's get started with something. Let's write a header. Now, there's different ways that we can do a header, but we're going to go with the easiest way, or the basic way. We're just going to write H1. And I'll type here, this is a header. And remember, if I open the tag, I have to close it. Alright, and let's add a paragraph below. And the paragraph is going to be using the P element, so letter P. Okay. So I just wrote this as a header, very generic, and this is a paragraph. I can now say I have written an HTML page. I'll go ahead and save it. And what I'm going to do now is, let me see where I saved it. I'll just save it on my desktop. Again, sorry, let me save it again as an HTML. Okay, and there it is. I have it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that into a browser. In this case, I'll just use Firefox. Look at that. I can now see that I've created a page. Let me take it into Chrome. Same thing. So as we see here, we can now say that we have in fact written a website. Now I could definitely add some more content here to make it more more compelling, but we've looked at the basic concepts. Obviously a real web page would have a lot more contents than just a header and a little line of text, but technically we've completed it. So let me make the text larger here again. So try that on your own. All right, let's try nesting some tags here. So let's say that I want the word written here to be bold. I simply will wrap it between an opening and closing bold element. So B, B. Save it. And if I open it in, let me close this. If I open it in Chrome, let me save it again, I think, just make sure. Oh, there it was. Okay, let me go ahead and drag that over to a browser. Now you can see that the word written is in fact bold. Alright, so again, the concept is the same. We see a pattern emerging here. Let's go ahead and make a word italicized. Let me open that with TextEdit again. Alright, if I'm going to make the word paragraph italicized, so I will use the letter I, and I'm going to close it again, same structure over and over again. Alright, so let's try opening that. And now you see the word paragraph is italicized. How cool is that? So let's go ahead and nest something. If I want to make the word paragraph both bold and italic, and let me make the text bigger again here. Alright, so if I want to do that, I will simply add another tag on top of that. This here is properly nested because the opening and the closing orders are the inverse. Remember what we talked about previously. And there it is now, bold and italic. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. The amount of tags in HTML is very vast. If you can go to W3schools.com for a whole list of them. With time, the main ones will become they'll become memorized. But for now, don't worry about memorizing them. Just worry about the basic rules and the basic structure of it. All right, now let's go ahead and create a link. So let's say we want to go to Google. So take me to Google.